Good evening, everyone. My name is Eileen Morgan, and on behalf of the Engineers Ireland Electrical and Electronic Division, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's event. So firstly, just housekeeping. Fire exit is over here, but nothing's planned, but just exit in an orderly fashion if we need to. And phones off if anyone hasn't done that yet. So tonight's presentation is entitled Science, STEM, for Development and the Young Scientist Tanzania Experience. So during this presentation, Joseph Clowry and Dr. Brendan Doggett of Young Scientist Tanzania will discuss this unique and innovative programme in Africa, which delivers two integrated and complementary events in the Tanzanian secondary school academic year. The first is a comprehensive science outreach programme covering all regions in Tanzania, and the second is an attractive high-profile annual Young Scientist Tanzania exhibition and competition in which secondary students showcase their research. The annual Young Scientist Tanzania exhibition component is based on the Young Scientist model in Ireland. In Tanzania, the annual Young Scientist Tanzania exhibition is used to showcase the success of the students involved in the science outreach programme. So just an intro into our speakers tonight. Joseph Clowry is the co-founder of Young Scientist Tanzania and is a non-executive director of Young Scientist Tanzania. Joseph is the inspiration and brainchild behind establishing Young Scientist Tanzania. Between 2009 and 2011, he put together all the components needed to embed the project in Tanzania. He gathered a team from academia, business and NGOs in Tanzania to support and drive the project. He secured the incubation funding and government approval to launch the project in 2011. He project managed the launch in 2011 and the first Young Scientist Tanzania exhibition in 2012. Joseph is a graduate of Trinity College Dublin and has extensive experience of the Irish education system. Additionally, he worked for over 10 years in the Middle East, North Africa and East Africa. In recent years, he has been promoting innovative development education, science for development projects, and was joint coordinator of the NCCA validated course Development Education, a course for transition year. Since 2011, Joseph is the Young Scientist Tanzania Director and Senior Advisor. And Dr. Brendan Doggett is Science Advisor for Young Scientist Tanzania and Head Judge of Young Scientist Tanzania. Brendan is an Irish physicist with a background in research and education. Brendan has been working with Young Scientist Tanzania as the Senior Science Advisor for the physical, chemical, technology, engineering and mathematical sciences since 2011. He is also the chair of Young Scientist Tanzania Judges, overseeing the judging process. So I'd like to now welcome Joseph and Brendan to the stage.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody, and it's great to be here, and we look forward to giving you a little bit of information about this amazing project, and thank you very much. Thank you, Elaine, for that
introduction.
Thank you. Okay, so you've mentioned a little bit about Young Scientists and the foundation. So if you look at the timeline here, we'll just talk very, very quickly about how we have ended up in Tanzania developing a project that is really based on what happened in Ireland about 55 years ago. As you mentioned, in about 2000, I'd been teaching for about 20 years at that stage, and I realized, okay, we're coming into a tiger economy, but there was a lot of students that I was teaching just walking away from getting their points and not having an idea of the inequalities that was going on in the world, the idea that millions of people were going to bed at night, starving, etc. So our school used to send kids over to Calcutta and to visit Mother Teresa's house for the dying, and come back to be about 10 students. And then we decided, look, that's not good enough. We really need to embed development education around inequality in the school curriculum. So in 2006, I started this with Self-Help Africa and another school in Portlaoise. Out of that, I then moved to the Combat Diseases of Poverty Consortium in Maynooth University, where I was education officer. And this was an amazing project. We took scientists from East Africa, and we used to bring them out on, they were researchers, But my job as education officer, we brought them to schools all over Ireland and we introduced them to students who were doing projects for the young scientists. Now, at that particular time, we had Self-Help Africa's Science for Development Prize. So it was my job to encourage kids, instead of just doing regular science experiments, to think of a project that they could do that might help people living in poverty. So for example, 2009, we had these students from South Kildare, Castledermot, who had become first in the intermediate section where they were using probiotics to help people living in poverty. Then in 2000, we mentored a project. The student actually mined the mosquito parasite and came first in the biological section, senior section. So there was a lot of these amazing projects.
And I think, I'm going to just jump in, I think was that probably the first time that the concept of science for development was shown in a science competition or a science competition setting?
Yes, it was like the idea was suddenly we had students working in Ireland on projects like malaria, like living in poverty, like issues around nutrition. But Maynooth University, to combat diseases of poverty, we were then able to bring the researchers into the schools, and it became a real live experience, the synergies developed. So for example, here you had Mary and Nima, both researchers, and they were working with these two girls on the probiotic drinks. But the benefit of this was we were then able to link them with this Kivolini, which are in Monza, which is on Lake Victoria, and we were able to share the information, and then these ladies would then give the yogurt to these kids who were living with HIV. So it was quite amazing.
They could actually show the benefit of giving the probiotic yogurts to those children, and they could actually show the evidence of the weight gain.
Yes, yes.
So isn't it a fantastic application of science? It's easy to come up with the ideas, I think, but much more difficult to apply them.
Yes.
And to get the evidence. Yeah, super project.
And then we had another project, for example, one of our Ugandan researchers, our first Ugandan researcher, he would have worked with these two schools. They had developed an amazing project, Colossus Reading, Carnew and Dunbayne College. They had done an amazing project on living in poverty for 1 week. So the kids in the school lived in poverty. Self-Help Africa were also involved in this project, and they produced an amazing book, 2015, and they actually won the project. And this was sort of inspirational, that the African researchers were going around looking at these schools. They were doing research in Maynooth University, and to be quite honest with you, I have to admit that the research that the kids were doing in Ireland was definitely more powerful than their own research, and they admitted this. So for example, if you take this photograph, this is us having gone to a school to give a science for development project. We had James from university. He met this 15-year-old guy who was doing the project on the genome of malaria. He changed his life completely. He actually is now doing this research himself. He couldn't believe he was meeting a 15-year-old student who was spending 10 hours a day mining in the biotechnology section of Maynooth University, mining and trying to come up with what was causing malaria. And the guy got the idea of doing this project because he heard this guy talking about malaria. He had never heard of malaria before this. And then Dr. Judy from Uganda, Mary, was working in Concern in Tanzania. This was the type of environment that led to science for development. But we were doing amazing work in Ireland, and then the International Advisory Committee for the consortium, they came to Maynooth. I gave a presentation on this science for development work, and there was one particular man that I have a huge respect for. He was Professor Michael Kelly, and he had been living and working on HIV for years in Zambia. And he looked at me and said, Joe, this is great work, but why are you wasting your time doing it here in Ireland? You know, why don't you bring this and think about this idea and take it to Africa where it's most needed? All the African researchers, they were exactly on the same thought. We have to bring this to Africa. So I then went out in May 2009, and I met a lot of people. I went to the universities that were linked in with the consortium. I met government people, and we decided, let's see if this can be brought to Africa. Between 2009 and 2011, even though I was working as the education officer for the consortium, at any moment I was free, I would head to Tanzania and we would go and try to build up relationships. Fortunately, back then we had great NGOs, Concern Worldwide were working there. We also had Oxfam, Children in Crossfire, and the embassy in Tanzania originally was Anne Barrington, really loved the idea. We then met the Ministry of Education, and they loved the idea. They just thought this is quite incredible, because they had the researchers coming back from Ireland. They were coming to meetings with me in the ministry, telling them about the level of science in Ireland. So very quickly, the ministry bought into it. And then they immediately granted me a research visa to look at the feasibility of bringing the project to Africa.
And just to go back, I think it's important to mention Zantel
Okay.
as a possible partner. I mean, it seems very plain sailing almost up to that point.
Yes, I suppose it is important. When I went there on my first visit, I met the CEO of Zantel, which is a telecommunications company. The CEO was an Irishman, Noel Herity. He loved the idea of the young scientist when he grew up in Ireland. So suddenly when he met me, he said, wow, this is amazing. We are definitely going to sponsor this project. We were in negotiations for a long time, and then suddenly he left. So we were back to square one. So we then had to go and
So close yet so far.
we had to go back and then look at new sponsors. Now, I've put up here 2010, Dr. Kamagisha comes to Maynooth University. I had met Kamagisha about a year before this, and he was the instrumental person from Dar es Salaam University. He loved the idea of the young scientist. He was an anthropologist. And then he came to Ireland. And when he came to Ireland, he was preparing for his PhD. But I took him out and we drove every winding road in Ireland to show him schools and to show him the type of research that people were doing. And here he is up in Donegal. We even brought him to Donegal. This is Patsy Toland from Self-Help Africa. We would have done even workshops on the Inishowen Peninsula. So eventually, Kamagisha became the co-founder of the Young Scientist in Tanzania, all from his experiences of looking at this amazing project in Ireland, Science for Development, Projects for the Young Scientist. Now, during this time, I'd always been in contact with Dr. Tony Scott from the Young Scientist in Ireland, updating him about what was happening. And Tony was an amazing supporter for us. He would say, well, look at Joe, if you can get all the elements needed to take this project to Africa, we will give you all of the intellectual property that's associated with it, all of the resources, like the online resources, etc. So it was amazing. Eventually, we got incubation funding from Pearson Foundation. This was, at that stage, they would have owned the Financial Times. And they loved the idea that we were going to have an outreach component to the project, and it would be then supported by an exhibition similar to the exhibition in Ireland. Tony then, in 2011, gave us the intellectual property for Tanzania, We then got the company registered as a not-for-profit Young Scientists and Technology Exhibition Tanzania Limited. And then with my contacts over 2 years, we got a board, an independent board for YST was established. Now, this was amazing. We had certainly 10 fantastic people on the board, totally independent of the government, but with the blessing of the government to run the organization. This was a very, very important element. So an MOU was signed with the Young Scientists and Technology Exhibition and the Commission for Science and Technology. Eventually, after 2 years of hard work, the ministry then asked us to launch Young Scientists Tanzania on their first ever Science Week in Tanzania, which was on the 50th anniversary of the foundation of the state. Now, this was an amazing opportunity for us. Suddenly, we're being given this privilege of launching Science Week, but also launching what they considered as the most amazing project that would hopefully leapfrog the sciences in Tanzania and bring it up to a level that was equivalent to Ireland in the next 20 years. So that's where we were at. And I think Brendan, I just met Brendan then a little bit before that.
Well, this is, I like this because it's not very often you can nail down the precise day and time that you meet somebody who will have a huge impact on your career. But I was invited to a dinner in the Irish Embassy on the May 26th. And it was at that evening, I remember meeting Joe over dinner. It was actually Enterprise Ireland had a couple of meetings in Tanzania at the time. And I remember meeting Joe, and you were telling me that the ministry had asked you, or had pitched this idea of running a pilot of Young Scientists Tanzania in 3 months' time. And I thought, wow, this is an incredible project to get involved in. And you could hear the passion from you as well. Obviously, this was something that you were working on for many, many years. I was just a blow-in. Science for Development wasn't even on my radar at the time. My background is physics, and I was doing a little bit of work in the university and with some schools in the area. But it just seemed such a perfect fit of what I was doing at the time and this incredible project. So it's a nice little milestone.
Yes, and I remember that day as well. And Brendan was an amazing, enthusiastic person. I had been out shoveling a lot by myself during those 2 years, and suddenly Brendan said, wow, this is quite incredible. And the ministry had only given us a few months then to show what the Young Scientist was about. So that meant we needed to go out to schools, we needed to mentor projects. So we decided the best thing we would do for the launch of the project we would select 4 schools. Betsaida, which was an orphanage for young girls, Kenton, which was a private school, Kiroma was a government school, a rural school, and then Oyster Bay was another government school. So we just took those 4 schools and we decided, okay, let's do the model, let's do the outreach, let's prepare and mentor fantastic projects for the young scientists.
And this is what you see when you go into those schools. The idea of actually doing hands-on science isn't something that they do very often. A lot of their learning is rote learning. The teacher will write something on the blackboard and the students are expected to memorize it for the exam. So the idea of doing a practical experiment was a completely new concept to them. Exactly. And that's why I think this science outreach program, that's what's exciting, and that's what's interesting is the time you spend in the schools. So yes. I remember my first day in Koromo, and you walk up to the laboratory and there's an out of bounds sign on it.
Yes.
And it really is, you're just trying to change their perception of science.
Yes. The idea of a science culture, or the idea of walking in and saying to a teacher, we want you to start doing some primary research. No, the idea is, no, we have to pass, we've been given an opportunity to go to school, but was the most important thing. So that culture gradually changed, and I suppose it was the idea of the outreach being linked then with an amazing exhibition. So we that was the most important thing. So our first exhibition was then held in a place called Nazimoja, which is right in the middle of Dar es Salaam.
And there was the 4 schools, I guess there's 4 schools, each representing the categories that we were going to roll out in terms of the national exhibition. So off the top of my head, I think we had 1 school doing a project, Betsaida, on calculating their carbon footprint. And again, when actually you look at the numbers, they're phenomenally carbon friendly. Everything is reused and recycled, and they grow a lot of their fruit and vegetables. So that was a brilliant project for them to actually appreciate what they were doing. One of the schools in the city, Oyster Bay, did a project on road capacity. So traffic jams were a huge issue. So they wanted to do a project actually understanding what's the best way of managing the traffic flow on the main road outside their school. Koromo did one, again it's a rural school well off the beaten track. They did a project on desalination of water, of drinking water. So when you're coming up with these ideas, you ask them, well, what's your problem? What's your big issue that you have day to day? And they said, Brendan, if I drink that glass of water, it's really salty. Is there anything we can do about that? And you're saying, absolutely, there's your project. Let's see what we can do. Can we come up with any simple solutions to address that? Yes. So they were the 4 projects that.
Yes, and I suppose well worth mentioning about Kenton. Kenton, it was a private school, and they actually had done their project on social and behavioural. And this was never a concept, the idea that you would do research on social behavioural. And in fact, they had done an amazing project on teenage pregnancy in school, and like where it was their first sexual experience.
And that was quite a controversial
Very
project.
controversial. So this was the situation. The minister then came along and he launched Young Scientists. Eric Gregory from Pearson Foundation and Lorcan Fulham, who was the Irish ambassador to Tanzania at the time, was special guest. Also, we had Dr. Noel Murphy, who was the co-chair from Maynooth. He also attended. The terrible, sad situation was that we have lost both of those people since the exhibition. Lorcan passed away and Dr. Noel passed away in recent years, so we certainly remember them tonight. So here's a photograph of our launch, and those were the 4 categories. At that stage we decided, okay, we'll introduce the 4 categories as in Ireland, and the colours, everything, the modelled template that we have in Ireland, exactly the same. Same categories, same rules, everything. This is just a nice photograph. After the reception, or after the launch, Lorcan invited us for a lovely reception in the embassy. You will see another.
Well, even I was just thinking, I like this photo because it shows Vincent there. 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th from the left. So Vincent English is a huge supporter, but again, one of those quiet supporters who was the European CEO of Vernier, which is a huge kind of technology company supplying equipment, educational equipment and STEM equipment to schools. So again, a huge supporter, and would donate a lot of equipment as well to the African researchers. And again, came out as judges every year. So it's a nice little memento to have.
So various guests were invited to the launch, and it was amazing. The Irish Embassy shortly after even though they were supporting us, encouraging us, helping us along the way, following the launch, the Embassy came on board and signed an MOU with YST, and then they became an amazing supporter of the project for the next 4 or 5 years. They sent a delegation from YST, the Ministry of Education and COSTEC, to visit the Young Scientists in 2012. So just, I suppose, to give you an idea of what the Young Scientists is about, we can have a look at this video. This is the first little video. Now, Emmanuel, that we went up to his area. We had done an outreach project workshop, and his project was amazing to see it in action. Up in his boma, I was there in the night time, all of the cattle coming in from all over the area, and half of the cattle had this ectoparasite from a local sacred Maasai tree smeared on the udders of half the cows in one area and not on the others. And he suddenly discovered that that the cows had no ticks on their udders. So he came up with this amazing idea. Now, he is now in university, so his trajectory by getting involved in the Young Scientists has been quite amazing. After our launch, everybody loved the Young Scientists in Tanzania. The government were on board. Irish Aid certainly decided that they were going to fund us for the following year. We got a lot of sponsors from the Karimji Javinji Foundation, and we decided that we would then have, on our first year, 120 projects. So we decided to expand to 10 regions. Now, 10 regions in a country that's 15 times bigger than Ireland might not seem crazy or difficult for you, but for us, we suddenly had to go and hold workshops in 10 different regions. And we thought it was quite amazing. We would go up to a new area, like, for example, Arusha, and we would hold regional workshops there. We would get maybe 20 teachers together. We would evangelize them about what Young Scientists was about. And then from every region that we would go, we would select a charismatic teacher who would then be the coordinator for the project.
And I think this is important because this is probably one of the first times when you go into a region, this could be the first time that the science teachers in one region will have come together. So you might have 10 teachers who are all working in the same area but have never met each other. So when they sign up to these workshops, they're in for a whole day. We have a nice space somewhere that they'll meet. And just the friendships that have grown out of this is phenomenal. But this is like the stepping stone in their career, and they realize that they're not alone in the classroom teaching science, that there's this other network out there, a support network, I guess, as much for them as it is for us when you arrive in and you know you have a super teacher ready to meet you and to introduce you to their teachers.
Yes.
And I suppose at the bottom here, this is a nice photo, I think, from last year.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly our coordinator in every region in Tanzania at the moment. And they are the first point of contact for all the science teachers on the ground. So
Yes.
it's a super achievement.
Yeah, and these are our regional coordinators. These are the people who are driving the project. It's not about Brendan or me or anybody. These are the people who have taken ownership of the Young Scientists. This is a grassroots movement. They really feel so proud. And the 10 original regions that we selected, they are still there. If you can see the lady,
Sarah there,
s-
the white
lady
skirt.
in the white skirt, she
Yeah.
would have been the first person Brendan and myself would have met 8 years ago when we went up to Arusha.
Arusha on our very first workshop.
For
She was
very
the first
first-
lady we met
yes.
by accident in the regional education officer's building.
Yeah.
She just walked by us, and
Yeah. So
again, she was swept up with the idea of science.
Yes.
Science for development.
So if we go from 2011, where we had 4 schools in a local area, then we go to 10 regions and 15 regions, and then by 2017 we have now every region in Tanzania covered. So if I want to go to Kigoma, which might be the furthest away, might take me 2.5 days to get there by bus. When I go there, the Kigoma coordinator will be there, having the school ready for me to give the workshop, have my accommodation arranged, etc. And then we'll travel with the students to the exhibition. So this is the grassroots movement, and they have taken complete ownership of the project. And I think what the government of Tanzania loved about the young scientists is we were coming with an idea that had worked in Ireland, the idea that Ireland back in the mid-50s when I was born was a poor place. They found it very hard to imagine that when I was born, we had no water in my house. We had no electricity. Well, we probably had short electricity, but my father would have died at 1.5, again, through simple little almost diseases of poverty. So they were amazed at how Ireland had developed, and the anecdotal evidence that the young scientists had somehow helped us to go from being one of the poorest countries from the time I was born in the mid-50s to where we are today. And they really, it resonates with Tanzania. It resonates with any country that is developing. Look at the model. What do you need to develop? You need science and technology and engineering. And that is, of course, you need education, but focus on those, and then you will focus on the development of your country. So just to give you an idea of what it's like, we have a little video to show you. If anybody knows Tanzania, you'll get an idea, because all of these are all complete different areas, but it gives you an idea of when we go on the outreach. So this is quite amazing. For Tanzania, suddenly they had no science fairs, nothing around the idea of building capacity, giving the kids an opportunity to do research. And suddenly, from every region in Tanzania, we have now this grassroots movement, and it's actually a highlight in the calendar in Tanzania, in the school calendar. In 2012, we had 3 girls from Kibosho Secondary School in Kilimanjaro, and they had done an amazing project on industrial fertilizer and increased nitrates in water where they lived. And they discovered that water on one side of their school was absolutely pure water coming from Kilimanjaro, and within a few kilometers the water was absolutely contaminated with nitrates. Now, unfortunately, in between there was a coffee plantation, and even that caused a lot of excitement. The BBC actually came, BBC International came and interviewed the girls, and there was even objections from the local coffee plantation to have the project or the live coverage of it on the radio, because of course there was going to be issues around who was polluting the river. But in Tanzania that is a major problem, because a lot of women pregnant women were drinking from the water, the river, and in that fact that area of Tanzania has the highest prevalence of blue baby syndrome, and it's where you drink the water, has a lot of nitrates, and then that then absorbs the oxygen from your blood. So very interesting first project. These girls came, this is the first exhibition. I just wanted to put in, this is a Michael Dooley from Concern Worldwide, just to mention that the Irish NGOs in particular love the idea that young scientists has moved outside of Ireland into a development context. In fact, Michael, who would be head of development education in Concern, thinks that the young scientist is possibly one of Ireland's best exports in terms of development.
And I think that's a nice picture again, just to go back to, because at that precise moment, Kamagisha on the left was talking live to Maynooth University. So there was a lecture theatre back in Maynooth of watching the award ceremony.
Yes, and these were the teachers in the teacher HDIP at the time. Now, we need to talk a little bit, we know time is rushing, but just in terms of another amazing concept around young scientists is that we have developed this idea of volunteerism. So every year we have about 20-25 university graduates who give up 2 weeks of their time to come and volunteer to run the exhibition, the logistics. Like I've mentioned about the size of Tanzania, but every year we have 400 or 500 people traveling from every corner of Tanzania. Some of them have never been on a bus before. Some of them will certainly not have been in a hotel before, certainly have not have used had running water before. So we need to have every logistics worked out, that they arrive in terms of child protection, where they are going, what they are doing, and we have these group of people from the universities who come, and this is a fantastic aspect of the young scientists.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say the volunteers do a phenomenal job. I mean, they spend all night in the hotels making sure that there's, any issue that the students come up with, there's someone there at all times to help them. I think
So
they do phenomenal work.
if I was saying we're going to move young scientists into any country, it will be the model of the regional coordinators, that idea that brings it the ownership, and certainly the idea of encouraging volunteerism for this project are vital. Here we are, the winners came to Ireland. We're in Maynooth there. They're outside Nicholas Callan's lecture theatre in Maynooth. And then in 2013, we had a drip irrigation system for recycled materials. Again, these were projects that were fantastic to show how with small technology you can increase your productivity.
And I think I'm going to jump in there to those. I think one of the reasons they did so well was because when the judges, I think Orla was a judge there actually that year, Orla and Edwina, when they were speaking to the two boys about their project, and they're asking, well, what, how do you know your project works? And they said, well, actually, when we were testing it, we thought, would we test it in the school? No, let's just go out to the farmers around our school and actually test it in a real situation. So they actually, from day one, they didn't just restrict themselves to testing it in the lab. They went right out and actually could show that it worked. So they farmers immediately in Singida using this immediately. It's fantastic.
Yes. And I know Edwina and Orla are watching us tonight from Ghana, so we put in this photograph specifically for you. Okay. Also, another aspect of the Young Scientist is where we have special awards, as in Ireland. So, for example, the ESB International used to have a prize for maybe the best project on sustainable energy or alternative energy. So here, and then they would go and visit the school and give them a prize. It was just an amazing collaboration between ESB International and the Young Scientists. The winners, this is Daria, Amor and Salma. They did a fantastic project on changing attitudes to control flies in Tanzania. When they came to Ireland, Mary Robinson came to visit them because she has, Tanzania is one of those countries that is very dear to Mary's heart. Just to give you an idea of the impact of doing a project in a school, we have this little short video from that particular school. Oops. Is this it?
Yeah, will it play?
No.
No.
Okay.
Now we can push it.
Okay. Then the following year we had the winners, Edwin and John Metted from Mzumbe Secondary School. They did a fantastic project on plastic bags and attitudes to plastic bags in Tanzania. And we just want to give you an idea of the excitement of what it is to go and win the Young Scientist. This is a school in the middle of Tanzania.
2015 from Mzumbe Secondary School.
It's nice just to say there that, and the same with all the winners, but John and Edwin, even though they're now in university, come back every year as volunteers. So yes. it's fantastic to see them every year, every August.
Yeah. And we haven't mentioned that everybody who wins the Young Scientist, we give them a university scholarship for life. And also we have every year 4 scholarships. So since we've started, we have now about 30 people in university. all of the winners, the two girls we saw in the last one, they're now studying medicine. Those two guys are now studying medicine in the best university in Tanzania.
And I think
also.
it's what you're talking about, the scholarships. The last two scholarships then go to, I suppose, pupils that might have been identified during the outreach program, who while not academically maybe scoring very high, but show the highest potential. And that's always an incredible sight when you see them. So during our outreach, you come across students who show fantastic ability, but just because of their circumstances just haven't got the opportunity. And it's amazing that we have a sponsor who recognises that every year.
And also, just I suppose we need to mention that you probably see that there's a lot of girls involved in the Young Scientists. So we have a policy of encouraging and almost having 50-50 girls attending. And it's not that easy because a lot of the science teachers are actually males in Tanzania. So, but I think we're looking at the time. I think I'm going to have to show one little video, and this is two girls from one of the poorest areas in Tanzania. Okay, you probably saw from there the exhibition in a few years has grown from being outside in a small open air 40 degrees. We now hold it in the most prestigious building in Dar es Salaam. So that just gives you an idea of how it has grown. And I'm just looking at the time, and I think we're just going to just flick through these. Every year, all the previous winners always come back and act as volunteers. So it's quite remarkable, the whole atmosphere that is around the project. Here are these two guys from last year, or no, 17, and that's them with all the past winners in the exhibition in Ireland. If you look, is it on to the left as you see it? That is the man who won the first young scientist in Ireland back in 1965. So that was last year. And here are the winners from 2018, Farida and Wilhelmia. And they will be coming to the Young Scientist in January at the Young Scientist BT. We have a stand at the exhibition, so if any of you are around, pop in and say hello. I think we just have to look, and here are all our past winners, all now, these are photographs taking them in their universities. So not only is it an amazing project while it's happening, but these are the people who are going to be looking back in 10, 20 years' time and thinking, wow, that was the Tanzania that we were part of. And it will be like me when I went to the Young Scientist for the first time in my life in 1968. It had a huge impact on me. And I know when I go and I see these people traveling all around Tanzania, coming to the exhibition, it's like my first trip from Castledermot to the Young Scientist back as a 13-year-old. And so it's quite remarkable. So we're looking at the time, and I think we need to
we can stop there.
Stop there.
Thank you.
Hear me? Oh, yeah. Thanks so much, Joseph and Brendan, for a really, really interesting and informative presentation. We will open the floor to questions. I don't see any coming through here on the email quite yet, but we'll give it a minute or two. I might ask you, has it been the same sponsor over the years, or have you had different sponsors on board, you know, even providing the scholarships for the winners? It's huge.
Yes. The sponsor for the scholarship is the same person. It's the Karimji Javinji Foundation. And actually, he came to the launch in 2011, walked around, loved the idea, called me into his office the next day and said, look, I really love this idea. So he became a gold sponsor. He was the sponsor of the technology. And then as time came, he approached us and said, listen, I'd love to give scholarships. So he is giving us 4 scholarships every year. And they are cumulative. So at the moment, he's responsible for about 26 people in university, and he's paying all their fees. Yeah. An amazing gentleman, Hatim Karimji.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's massive.
And then in terms of the other sponsors, we had originally Pearson Foundation. They sponsored us for the incubation money, and then Irish Aid. And then we would have had Concern Worldwide. They are a continual sponsor. And the great thing about Concern Worldwide is they really supported us in more ways than not. They gave us office space in Tanzania also, so we were able to work from an office space.
Yeah, you must be so proud of the impact you've made in Tanzania. Have you plans for making it even bigger in the future, or expanding outside Tanzania?
It's a challenge, isn't it? But it has. I mean, the idea has been, and Joe
Yes.
has been working in Kenya as well.
Yes. Well, for the last, the project, exactly the same idea has actually started in Kenya as well. Dr. Vincent O'Neill, the ambassador out in Kenya, has been instrumental in moving it there. So I've been back there over the last nearly 3 years, 10 times, helping out, giving as much advice. And they've actually launched it last year. We were there, Brendan was there helping out on the judging, and it's going to take off in Kenya. And it's only a matter of time that the model will move to other countries. It is a model that works. It's a transferable model, but certainly if you combine the exhibition with the outreach work that we are doing, then it's a model for development. And it will only be a matter of time. I think we've got a lot of other countries who, especially people who were in Maynooth from Uganda, etc., they keep on phoning me and saying, look at, when are you going to bring this project to another?
I think that alumni network is
the alumni
an incredible
network
resource that
Yeah.
that know that it work and are great ambassadors for it.
Yeah, and I think anywhere where Irish Aid are in a developing country, there's a great potential for this project to move, for sure.
And in August each year, is it?
In
In Dar es
August.
Salaam.
In Dar es Salaam.
Always
yes.
Dar es Salaam.
Yes, in August. Yes, this year, the first week in August.
It has changed, I guess. The pilot was November.
Yes.
I'm at 40 degrees heat, so it certainly didn't suit me, the temperature.
Yes.
But it just suits the school calendar. That's the one kind of month that because the school calendar is quite fragmented.
Yeah.
So it's the 1 week that suits the majority of the schools.
And we also had to worry about the logistics. So some of the students are traveling for maybe 2.5 days in the buses. So, and that's the time of the year. August is when there's very little rain. So that's the logistics around that as well. So we've decided that yes, that's possibly the best time. That's their winter. Yeah.
I'll just check these online questions now. We have a question from Orla Burke.
Orla, one of our judges.
Oh, she said I asked her a question already, but she said any plans to extend beyond Kenya?
Not at the moment, but we are in chatting to a few organisations who are very, very keen. I know Concern Worldwide love the project, and
it's only a matter of time, really.
It's only a matter of time, and I mean it links in really well with Concern Worldwide and their whole emphasis on development. And as I said, there are so many examples of why you would want it to be in another country. When I look around in my own life and I look at my own country and I see the effect of science and technology on the impact that it has on people's lives and the country, and we are looking at the impact that it has in Tanzania and will definitely have in Kenya. As I said, it's only a matter of time. Any country that needs development.
I think it's important to highlight it's not just the students who are benefiting, but also the teachers. I mean, there you're giving them some professional development as well.
Yes.
And support. So it's the students and the teachers. And I guess the teachers are again, one of our biggest promoters around the country when they see and when they experience the benefit of it, just as a teacher, what they learn out of it and what they can apply then in their classrooms. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and when all the past winners come back each year and the new students then get to meet them and see where things have gone for them.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, our first winners from 2012 have graduated. I think this is
yes
this year, and they've got married, and it's great. And they still come back then every year, and it's great to see what were students now are becoming adults.
And before we go, in terms of Orla, she's very, very welcome to come to Tanzania at any time, especially in August when we might get her to judge.
Very good. I hope you're listening, Orla. Any last questions? Yes.
Brian Mulhern from GMIT. I'd like to commend you on your efforts in Tanzania. It's great to see what was essentially an Irish model translating to a different part of the world and working very well. Just wondering if you would maybe bring more of that model and introduce the Science Week concept out there. It's just finished here this year on Sunday, and it's a very good model. So that's one question. Another short question is, do you see any increase, let's say, in the uptake in courses in third level in Tanzania, given the input from the Young Scientist competition? I mean, it's taken a while here to get an increase in science and engineering courses and numbers of people taking them. I'm just wondering what's the impact there, or have you tried to measure it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Kamagisha has been looking and trying to do some baseline research on where we were and where we, in terms of the students that we were involved with, if they've gone on to second and third level. So I suppose it's a bit early yet, but certainly all of our winners and all our runner-ups and a lot of our students have gone on to university from our anecdotal evidence. But it will be a while, I suppose, until it'll take another few years to.
And I guess when you look at the
input.
statistics in Tanzania, I see that the big drop-off actually, or the challenge, is getting them from O level to A level. That's where you experience a massive drop-off. So with a competition like this, you can show that science, is something exciting and it's fun, and education is fun, and a lot of these students who take part would be O-level students as well. And it's great to see them then progress and stay in school right up to their A levels, and then hopefully beyond into third level.
And in fact, it's very interesting because the winners of the first young scientists from Kibosho, the girls who did the analysis of the water, when they were in school, when they won the young scientists, they were only in the equivalent to the junior cert, and they wouldn't have been able to go on to do leaving cert chemistry. But the school actually introduced chemistry and physics so that they could go on and do their A levels equivalent to the leaving cert. And then they went on and did it, and they're now, for example, one of them is a pharmacist, one of them is a doctor, and the other is a biotechnologist. So even for me, for example, when I was at school in Castledermot back all those years ago, I could have only gone on to do my junior cert. That's all the school did it back those days. So I had to go on then to Carlow to do my leaving cert. So I'm seeing all of these, I'm looking at these absolute mirrors of what it was like growing up in Ireland as a poor country and what we're actually doing now. And that's why it's actually so exciting.
And I think, just to answer your first question about Science Week, that really ties in with the outreach program, because I would certainly encourage a lot of the teachers to bring their students and participate in those type of events. There's a lot of them regional. Now, Tanzania is a huge country, so you'd have a lot of regions would have a Science Week or a Science Month, and maybe the local college might host a regional exhibit. So I would certainly be always encouraging the teachers, if you're working with your students on a project, bring them to this, get them to exhibit their project and to practice presenting it. Because the challenge, we all know, is it's easy to do a project, but it's difficult to explain it to a lay person and to present your results, and that takes practice. So you're right, these Science Weeks and regional exhibits play a vital role, but more in the outreach program.
Possibilities of synergies as well in the future between young scientists and maybe organisations here in Ireland.
Absolutely. Possibility to mix it with Science Week here and see how the two could work together. Yeah. Well done. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I've just one last question as well. Has anything fed back from the young scientists in Tanzania that has helped improve the young scientist here in Ireland? Has there been any feedback that has improved our own one, or is there so much of an overlap?
Oh, there is. No, for sure. Like, for example, the Self-Help Africa Science for Development Prize that has been going for, I don't know, maybe 15 years. I don't know how long exactly. Maybe there are far more entries for that in Ireland. And for example, last year the winners of the Concern debates, the national championship, they actually came out to Kenya to the young scientists as visitors. So there's a lot of there's certainly the Tanzanians and Kenyans will benefit, but Irish people are also Irish students, because it's opening up that world of there is inequality, there is a sort of a developing side to our planet, and the idea of let's get involved, let's see if we can sort of collaborate between the south and the north.
Very good.
Yes.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Brendan. So that brings our evening's event to a close. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending, both here in Clyde Road and on our webcast. And I'd like to thank Brendan and Joseph for for their presentation tonight.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
million, lads.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.